get money addict, I'ma get money tatted. Money in the attics, money in the stashes, money in the cabinets, stuffed in the mattress, safe full of guns, more money up in that shit. Taz on Tisa, Jeremy Scott Adidas, Mason Martin Margiela, 3-strap sneakers, riding with a leecher, student and a teacher. It's money over bitches, no room for a skeezer. Thinking of a Lambo, bathing they cam.
Alright guys, today I'm going to show you how to create a 3D audio visualizer similar to the one that you just saw. Today you're only going to need one program, Blender, which is free. You're going to need an add-on. It's an add-on made by Geethiox, and it's what we'll be using to create that audio visualizer effect. It is also free, and a link will be in the description. And you will need one song of your choice. It could be a song or a sound or anything. It just needs to be a audio file. So start up by opening up Blender and immediately going to the user preferences panel, which is over here, Control-Alt-U. Down here where it says install from file, click that and navigate to wherever you saved the add-on. Navigate to the core folder and select gxav.py and hit install from file. Now if you select user, you should see that it's checked, and you can just refresh and save just to be safe. Next, we're going to delete the cube and the light, and we're going to, down here where you see a little image of a cube, I'm going to click that and select the video sequence editor, zoom out a bunch, and down here where it says add, hit sound, navigate to wherever you have your audio file, click it and hit add strip. And if you see right here, there's this bold line, that is 250 frame mark, and that's where the animation ends. But our song is a lot longer than 250 frames. Mine is 4,477. Yours is probably different, but you can tell how long it is because it's the last number on your sound strip. So if you go down here to end and you just type in 4477 or whatever yours is and scroll out a bunch, you can see now the animation ends, or will end, right when the song ends, which is what we want. So now that we have that done, you can switch back into the 3D view by clicking on this little strip, the same place, and just select the cube again, and just change back into the 3D viewport. Next we need to change the frame rate right here from 24 to 29.97. This is because we're going to be rendering out our animation into an image strip, and in order to have it sync up perfectly with the audio, it needs to be just under 24 frames. Next, we're going to select change from Blender Render to Cycles Render, and we're going to go to this third panel right here, which is the Scene panel, and we're going to click this button, Recreate Visualizer Base. So first we're going to change the count X, that is the number of cubes. You can see if we change it right there. We're going to change that to 64. I find that this gives us a nice amount of detail. It's what we want, because 32 is not that much in my opinion. You need more, but you can mess around with most of the variables in here, and you can get some pretty cool effects. Next we're going to add the channels. Like I said at the start, when you imported your audio, if it's just a song, then it's going to be stereo, but if you have left and right channels, then you can select them here. So just navigate back to your audio file, and you can copy and paste it for both. I don't think you have to since it's stereo, but if you had two separate audio files, you'd select the left and right. We're going to change the start frame to 0, and we're going to leave it on the tertia frequency interpreter frequency mode. I find that tertia works nicest as opposed to like interpolated and linear. Tertia just takes the like median frequency, and you just get a lot more detail this way. It looks the nicest in my opinion, but you can try out the other ones if you like. I for tertia, and it's the recommended, as you can tell. So next, just click Bake Animation Data. This could take a while depending on how slow your computer is. Blender might say that it's not responding, but just give it a couple seconds. Alright, now that we're back, you can see it removed all those stacks of cubes or rectangles and replaced it with just a line of one high. However, if you scrub through your animation, let me scroll out so I can get farther along here, you can see we do have some motion. which is pretty cool. Alright, we're going to remove the rotation and location on this camera by pressing N, and location, we're going to just click 0, 0 on all of these. Rotation on the X, we're going to change that to be 90, and we're going to remove the rotation on the Y and Z axis. Next, if you press 7, you can press N again to remove that. We're in 5 to go into orthographic view mode. We're just going to drag this back 3, and now you can press 0 to go into camera view mode, press G to grab it and move around, and then you can press Z, X, or Y to lock it on any of those axes. I'm going to bring it up to about the same height and then press G and tap the middle mouse wheel, and that will let us zoom in and out, zoom out until you can just barely see the edges, and I'm going to drag it up again about there, I think. Next, we're going to add a backdrop, so press Shift A and select this plane option, then press S to scale it up until the back corners are outside of the width of your camera. Like you can see right there, that's where the corner is, that's where it is. It just makes it easier for this next part. You're going to press Tab to go into edit mode, then select these back 2 corners, and press E to extrude, press Z to lock it to the Z axis. Go back into camera view, and you want to bring them up until they're out of the camera's view, so like right about here. Give yourself some extra room because we're going to subdivide it, which will decrease the height. Next, you're going to press A until everything is selected, and then you're going to press W on your keyboard and then select subdivide. Next, you're going to tab back out of edit mode and pressing Control and 2, that should add a subdivision surface modifier. If you go over here to the wrench, you'll be able to see it did in fact add a subdivision surface modifier of 2. You can press Control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 all the way through 9, however many you want, but we only need 2. Next, you're going to select over here on the left the smooth shading tab, and when you go back in here and see if we render it, you can't see much because we have no lights. So let's add the lights. Click on the world tab right here, select use nodes right here next to this gray color. There's a button that has a little circle in it, select that, go to environment texture. We're going to light the scene with probably multiple lights, but the main light is going to be this HDRI image. There'll be a link in the description to go to a website that has archives of plenty of free HDRIs. I'm going to be using one from that website. It is of some rooftops in Barcelona, and you can see that if you go into your camera mode, select B or Control B, drag out a little box around here, and then select rendered mode, and press 5 I think to go into orthographic. Yeah, there you go. You can see, wait for it to render a second. There's Spain. Cool. So press Z to go into wireframe mode, 0, and Control Alt B to remove that box if you put one there. Something that you can see right off the bat is right here, some of our rectangles are submerged in the plane. That's not good. So we're going to press 1 and 5 to go into front orthographic view mode. And yeah, you can see they're clipping under the bottom. So the way that we're going to fix this is by pressing B, box selecting everything except for these empties, B and middle mouse to deselect, box deselect. And now that we just have all of these rectangles selected, and you can control, drag, and by pressing shift you can become very precise. If you zoom in close, you won't be able to tell, but yeah, there you go. It's flush. You can be a little bit above or below, doesn't matter too much. Now when we try rendering out this shot, you can see it's very bright. So the white backdrop is reflecting far too much light. So we're going to select that, go over here to the materials panel, and select a mix shader, because we're going to have a glossy node as well as a diffuse node. Change the factor input. That's how much, like if it was 0, and whatever your first shader is, which is the glossy one, it would become 100% glossy. If it was set to 1, then it would become 100% diffuse. We're going to set it to 0.8, so it'll be 80% of this diffuse, which is going to be this dark gray color. Now when we press F12 to render it again, you can see we have a much, it's like a gradient sort of effect. And don't worry, it's very grainy right now. This is just for quick reference. That's much nicer, I think. Let's see what's next. We have added light. I think we're going to do some post-processing, actually. So yeah, in camera view, go to the camera tab and go down here, drag this up to 100% of the resolution that you want, as well as under sampling, we're going to up the render to 100 and let it render. This should take a couple seconds or minutes, depending on whether or not your graphics card is manufactured by NVIDIA or AMD, as Blender is optimized to render off CUDA cores, which are only in NVIDIA graphics cards. So if you have an AMD graphics card, it will default to rendering off of your CPU. If you do have a NVIDIA graphics card, though, I should have told you this earlier, you can just press Ctrl-Alt-U to open up the user preferences, go over here to System, and under Computing Device, you can select CPU right there. But as you can see, I have only my CPU. Your GPU would show up there too if you had it. As you can see, this has finished rendering like it is now. And we're going to open up the node editor right here. We're going to select the second tab, Render Layers, and we're going to select Use Nodes as well as Backdrop. Press N to get rid of that side panel. Drag these off to opposite ends and hit Control and Shift and click on your Renders Layer tab. That will give us a viewer node. You can tap V to zoom out a little bit. We're just going to add some post-processing effects. You can do whatever you want here, but this is just some stuff that I think looks nice. So I added a glare. We're going to leave it on streaks, medium. We're going to lower the threshold until you can start to see like a little glint off of the... Yeah, that's too much. So I think we're going to go 0.35. Yeah, you can see a little bit of like a glare from the blocks. Next, we're going to add a distort lens distortion, and you're going to hit, I think we're going to add 0.025 to the distortion. Maybe it is dispersion, 0.025 to dispersion. Yeah, that's what we want. 0 to distortion, we want it to remain in the screen. But if you press Alt-V, it'll zoom in, by the way. Alt and zoom. You can see it added like some very small blue and red outlines. It's something that actual cameras do. It just makes it look more realistic. But you want to be like tasteful with it, I guess. If you go overboard, like say we gave it a value of 1, and it's just gonna blur it to all Kingdom Come. And I guess that's an effect that you could go for if you want. But like I said, I prefer to keep it barely noticeable. It's just something that catches the eye if you see it and looks nice. Next, you're going to add color RGB curves to do some color correction. You have 3 tabs: the contrast, the red, the green, and the blue. So we can fiddle with the contrast here. That'll make the brights bright, and the brights brighter and the darkers darker. But you don't want to go crazy, because I think what we had was a pretty good range. Yeah, like that. If you wanted to give it like a reddish hue, then you could drag the red up. I don't like that, so you can click the little X. It does look a little bit washed out, so maybe give it some colors. Give it a little bit of green. That's too much. So you can do whatever you want there. Just make sure whatever your furthest most to the right node is connected to your composite node, like that. Next, we're going to set up the render location. So right here under output, under the camera tab, you can see it says /tmp. That is your temp folder, and if you render it right now, it'll go right there. But instead, you want to just create a folder anywhere that you can locate, and I'm going to call this folder, or I guess PNGs, or just whatever you want to call it. It's just going to give you a ton of images, however many frames you have right here, 4477. Going to give me almost 4,500 images in there, so yeah, just keep that in mind. Don't put it anywhere where it won't be able to fit. Down here, PNG, you can render it to any of these. I'm just going to go PNG. Actually, I don't think some of these will work, as a matter of fact, but PNG and JPEG will work. PNG is lossless, JPEG is lossy, so you won't get best looking pictures if you do this, but PNG is definitely good enough. Down here you could up the render samples if you want, but I'm just going to leave mine at 100 because this is going to take a long time to render. I've done this before and it took almost 3 days of my computer just being, all of its resources were being taken up by Blender, so I'm going to leave mine at 100 frames. You could up yours, but like, if you look at this image, it's grainy, but it's not super bad, especially if it's played in an animation. You wouldn't be able to tell that much. Yeah, so once you have it to where you want it like this, you just go up here and select animation, make sure your start frame is on 1, and yeah, just let it start animating, and this will take a long time. I'll be back once it's finished. Alright, here we are back in Blender after a couple of days of rendering. It is taking a lot longer than I first expected. Something I'd like to notice, or I'd like to point out that I noticed, is when you're in the video sequence editor, initially how I said that the song was 44,077 or something like that, once you change it from however many FPS it is initially, I think it's 30 or 24, whatever it is initially, once you change that, the frame rate will most likely change, and this was puzzling me for a little while, but it shouldn't matter that much so long as it's consistent. So my frame rate increased to 5591, so you just have to account for that up here in the end frame by changing whatever it initially was to whatever it is after you change the frame rate. Another thing I'd like to explain why we're rendering it to PNGs. That is so that if in the event that you need to pause the animation for whatever reason, you can just hit escape, say it's mid-render, say it's like this, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh snap, I have to send out an email or I have to do anything other than what Blender is using my computer for. You can just escape and it will still render all of your pictures. It'll leave you with an image file sequence rather than one large video file, which would then be corrupted if you pause it halfway through. So when we render the video to a sequence of PNGs and then compile it into a video, it just works a lot nicer because you can pause it and then resume it wherever. However, it won't start in the same place. So say you render it, you start at frame 1 and then you go to 1153 like I did here, and then you pause it. When you come back, you have to just change the start frame from 1 or whatever it was to 1153 or 1 after. So say it rendered all the way through to frame 1153, then your start frame would be 1154. So you just move it 1 after and it'll continue right where it left off, and there should be no problems. So now I have this sequence of PNGs right here, and it is very large. I didn't finish the entire song, just enough so I could finish this tutorial. I got all the way to about 1900. That's plenty to show the example for what we're doing. So next, what you do, once you have all or however many of your frames you need, you're going to open up a new file. So hit Control-N to load up the startup file. You're going to go down here to the video sequence editor. You're going to hit Add, Image. You're going to navigate to your image strip, PNGs right here. Hit A to select all of them, and hit Add Image Strip. So that adds them all back in. And once again, you're going to want to look at this frame right here and change it from 1846 to, or change 250 to however many frames you're at. So I'm at 1846, so I'll change the end frame to be 1846. You can zoom out and make sure that the bolded line stops at the end of the strip. It does. I'm going to change the frame rate to 30. You change, the final render is going to be 30 frames per second, but like I said earlier, you have to render the frames to the individual sequence frames to 29.97, and then the audio and video, the final thing will be at 30 FPS. And of course, if you wanted, you could make it be 60 FPS or however many. You just have to account for it. So instead of changing it to 29.97 in the first half of the video, you change it to 59.94. Just keep in mind it's going to be a much larger file because you're essentially rendering twice as many frames. So we also have to import our sound. So navigate to wherever you have your sound file. Here's mine. And you see the sound file goes off the edge by a lot because I did not render the entire strip. I will eventually, but I worked it out and it's going to take about 7 more days past this of just non-stop rendering. So I decided I'll just cut it short enough to show you guys what it should look like, and I'll finish it throughout the course of the next few weeks. We're going to change the output under the camera tab right here, the one that we're working in for the main portion of this video. We're going to change the output to somewhere other than the temp folder. I already have one right here, videos, and I'll call it final. You can see I've already rendered out a couple just to make sure that it works. It does. That's final. Yep, accept. We're going to change the render style to cycles. I don't know if it matters too much at this point, but just to be safe, this is what I did it on last time. Change the resolution up to 100. That is necessary. And right here for the file type, we're going to change this to MPEG. It has to be MPEG if you want it to compile audio and video. Otherwise, you'd have to add the audio in through another program like Windows Movie Maker or Adobe Premiere or anything else. But we're going to try to keep this entirely in Blender. This took me a while to figure out actually. But yeah, keep it on MPEG. Then under MPEG, there should be a tab encoding. We're going to change the format. You could change this to, I think most of these would work. I'm going to change it to H.264 because I know that that works. We're going to select use lossless output. That way we get the nicest quality possible. And for audio codec, I'm going to use AAC because I know that that works as well. And I think the rest of those are fine. Yeah, so now if you scroll up and you hit animation, it's going to just cycle through your frames. This will take a lot faster because it's not actually rendering through all of your frames because you already rendered them. It's just stringing them all together in one coherent file, which we can then view. So I'll be right back once this is finished. Alright, as you can see, it has finished rendering. And if we open up our PNGs file, let me find it. Yeah, PNGs, here it is. And I believe I rendered it to videos. Yeah, here it is. And which one is it? Final.avi. And here you go.
Alright.
Get money addict, I'ma get money tatted. Money in the attics, money in the stashes.
I don't know how choppy that looks on the screen capture, but it is quite smooth. So I think that's going to bring this tutorial to an end. Let me know anything I could have done better, and if you have any questions about what happened, or if you have any suggestions for what I should do next time, feel free to leave a comment below. I love hearing from you guys, and that's why I keep making videos. Thanks.